Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 3. This week, we're moving on to one of the most fundamental responsibilities of any system administrator: managing users and groups. We'll learn how to create accounts for new users, set their passwords, organize them into groups, and grant them the specific permissions they need to do their jobs using the sudo command. Let's get started. The first thing we need to do is create a new user. The standard low-level command for this on all Linux systems is useradd. I'm using sudo because creating a user requires administrative privileges. So I'll type sudo useradd dbane. Now, a quick but important note. You might see another command out there called add user. On some systems, like Debian or Ubuntu, add user is a more user-friendly script that asks you questions. But here in Fedora, add user is just an alias for useradd. So they do the same thing. We're going to stick with useradd because it's the universal command you'll see everywhere. When we create a user, the system adds an entry for them in a file called /etc/password. We can see the new line for a user dbane by using grep. This line contains the username, a placeholder for the password, the user ID or UID, the primary group ID, GID, a comment field, the user's home directory, and their default shell. You'll notice the password field just has an X. For security, Linux doesn't store the actual encrypted password here. Instead, it's kept in a separate secure file called /etc/shadow, which can only be read by the root user. This separation is a key security feature. After creating user, the very next step is always to set their password. We do this with the password command. So sudo password, spelled P-A-S-S-W-D, dbane. The system will then prompt me to enter and confirm the password. Notice the system is saying the password is shorter than 8 characters and a bad password. This is purely for demonstration purposes, so it's okay, but you should use a much more secure password. However, the system will still let you use a shorter password. I'll quickly create another user named jpicard, just so we have an account to practice deleting. Now, to delete that user, we use the userdel command. I'll type sudo userdel remove jpicard. The tac-r option is important. It tells the system to also remove the user's home directory and all of their files. Now let's talk about groups. Before we create our own custom groups, it's important to understand a type of group that's created automatically. This is called the user's private group scheme. On modern systems like Fedora, when you create a user, a new group with the same name is automatically created and assigned as that user's primary group. We can see this with the ID command. If I type ID dbane, you can see his UID and his primary GID are the same. and he belongs to a group called dbane. This is the default behavior, and it helps with managing permissions for that single user. Now let's talk about supplementary groups. These are the groups we create to grant permissions to multiple users. To create a new group, we use the groupadd command. I'll create a group called authors with sudo groupadd authors. Just like with users, a new line is added to the etc group file, showing the group name and its group ID. And we can find that by typing grep authors/etc/group. Just like with users, a new line is added to the etc group file, showing the group name and the group ID. To add our user dbane to this new group, we use the usermod command for user modify. The options here are important. TAC A stands for append. TAC G specifies the supplementary groups. So usermod TAC A, TAC G, authors, dbane adds the user to the authors group without removing them from other groups. We can verify this change with the ID command. Running ID dbane again now shows us his primary group, dbane, and in the group section, we can now see is also a member of our new authors group. The final topic for this week is sudo, which allows regular users to run commands with root privileges. This is based on the principle of least privilege. We want to give users only the permissions they need. The configuration for sudo is stored in the etc sudoers file. Crucially, you should never edit this file directly. Always use the command vi sudo. This command opens the file in an editor, but also checks for syntax errors before saving, which prevents you from accidentally locking yourself out of the system. So we will type sudo vi sudo. If we scroll down, we can see this line here. The percent sign indicates a group. So this line means all users in the group named wheel are allowed to run all commands as any user on this machine. On Fedora and Red Hat systems, the wheel group is the standard administrative group. So the safest and standard way to give a user full sudo privileges is to simply add them to the wheel group. I'll do that now for the user dbane with the usermod command we just learned. So I will type sudo administrative permissions, usermod tac A, add to the group tac G, wheel dbane. Now, if we check the ID command again, ID dbane, we can see that dbane is a member of the authors group and wheel groups, in addition to his primary group. he can now run administrative commands using sudo. And that's a quick tour of managing users and groups. We've covered useradd, password, userdel, groupadd, and usermod. And we've seen how to grant sudo access by adding a user to the wheel group. Practice is key, so be sure to work through this week's lab to get comfortable with these essential commands. As always, if you have any questions, post them in the Q&A forum. Thanks for watching.